Hey everyone, Jordan here. Today we're going to be taking a look at our first ASUS X870 motherboard. As you can see, I've got a few from the range here. They've actually got loads this launch, so they've gone a bit nuts, but we have got the kind of key ones from the range. So the TUF is a board that I've used quite a lot of in both the Intel and the AMD platforms actually for builds and also benchmarking. They do have a more affordable stance, but they do have a lot of the top end features, so they're at a kind of good middle point. But let's crack this open. I'll go through the main features, of course, and we'll do a little bit of an overview. So now I think we're going to find our Wi-Fi in this little pocket here. So Wi-Fi 7 on this board. All the range of the X870s are going to be Wi-Fi 7, and they have also got those little quick connectors on as well. So next, let's get the board out and we can look underneath at the accessories. I don't expect there's going to be too much to look at in this one. Screws for M.2. There's a little rubber pad, I'm guessing, for an M.2. There's another one in that packet there. A couple of SATA cables, one of which is right angled. And we've got all of our quick start information, a little bit of a thinner manual, and then also some stickers. Now the company, it seems to be getting rid of the big manual. Not really too sure about that, but it seems that we've got the essential stuff. So I guess it's a way to cut down on paper, and it's just an English one as well. So obviously, depending on what region you're in, you'll get the right one for where you are. And here we go for the new TUF. I haven't actually got the X670 version, but we'll put a picture on the screen. A little bit more garish with the branding. It certainly stands out. They've made it a real feature rather than just a kind of subtle little thing from the previous gen. Some people will like it, some might not. There's a little pill there. Let's do that to reveal that very chrome looking branding there. It's a little bit of a different VRM for this board. We've got two separate aluminium or aluminum blocks for the VRM rather than it generally being one kind of L-shaped piece. So a little bit of a different style. And talking about that VRM, look at all these caps and then the chokes behind. Absolutely stacked. It's got a 16 plus 2 plus 1 power stage on this board. This is also an 8-layer PCB as well, so you generally get a little bit more stability the higher or the more layers that you have on your board. So let's have a look around the board. On the top left hand side, we've got our two 8-pin EPS connectors. These have got solid pins as well. We've got our first 4-pin there, that's for an AIO pump, and we've got an optional and a CPU fan to the right, so that's our first 3 4-pin headers. We've got our debug LEDs on the right hand side, very close to the edge of the PCB, but handy things to have. I really would like to see the little postcode readers on ASUS boards. We do see them on the higher end ones, but I think ones like this could benefit from them as well. It doesn't add that much price either. We've got our first 3-pin addressable RGB connector, our 24-pin for power. USB-C connector there, that's a 20 gigabits per second connector, and our USB 3 for our Type A ports. Nice little PCI release latch there, very handy thing to have if you're swapping in graphics cards in and out all the time, benchmarking them. On the right angle, a couple of SATA ports, 6 gigabit per second. And then further down we have got our front panel, of course. We've got a pump chassis, so an additional 4-pin, 2 USB 2 headers, so great for things like hubs and RGB connectors and things like that. We've got an additional 2 3-pin connectors there for RGB, so quick maths. No 12-volt addressable RGB 4 pins on this board at all, so just going down the 3-pin route. We have 3 more 4-pin headers there for your fans and also our front panel audio. If you're wondering about the controller, this is a Realtek ALC 1220p. Then there's also an additional 4-pin up by the M.2 slot there, so that gives us a total of 8 4-pin headers on this board. Going back up to the socket, of course, AM5, so support for 7000, 8000 and 9000 series processors. And then we've got our DIMM slots to the right, supporting a maximum of 192 gigabytes of DDR5, 8000 megahertz. That's on Expo. Of course, you can push it if you want to do it manually. So let's look at our storage and expansion slots. First of all, we need to take off this little heatsink. So then taking that off, that will reveal our first slot, which is a Gen 5 slot. We have got a quick release latch on there for our little M.2. There's also a rubber pad for it to sit on. Thermal pad on the back of the heatsink of this little aluminum piece. Not very thick though. I'd like to see a little bit more thicker metal, especially if we're going to be running Gen 5 drives. They're notoriously hot, and to see something a little bit thin is not ideal, so I'd certainly recommend that you grab a Gen 5 SSD that's got a big old beefy heatsink on it in the first place rather than going with this one. Then we've got another cover we need to take off below. So taking that off, on the back we've got 2 more thermal pads and then additional 2 slots, so support for another 2 80mm drives. The top slot will run at Gen 5, then the one underneath will run at Gen 4, so you have got a total of 2 Gen 5 slots on this motherboard. Now again, this piece of aluminium is not the thickest, and especially being this is a Gen 5 slot, I will kind of be a little bit concerned about the thermals. Maybe we could test that when we use it in a build. We'll put a Gen 5 drive in there and see how this performs with this heatsink. Let me know if you'd like to see that. There's also another NVMe Gen 4 slot just below those two, and you can move that peg if you want to put up to 110mm drive in that one. So the total on here is a total of 4 drives, 2 of which are Gen 5 80mm, and you can also do a 80mm Gen 4 and 110mm Gen 4. So for our PCIe slots, the top one will be a Gen 5 slot. This is a armoured one. You can see we've got that quick release latch on there. No bit to the end of that, so it's literally going to be this little bracket that supports the card, and then obviously releases when you press that down. We've got an additional PCIe slot at the bottom with a standard connector. That's going to be running at Gen 4 speeds, so a total of 2 PCIe on this, 1 Gen 5, 1 Gen 4, but only 2 rather than 3 that we generally see, so just something to bear in mind if you're looking to do an expansion in the future with like a sound card or a capture card, as you will be limited to just 1 optional. So looking at the rear I/O, we've got our 2.5 gig LAN at the top for a change, usually at the bottom, but doesn't really make that much difference. We've got the 3 green USB ports. These are going to be 10 gigabits per second. We've got a HDMI, so good if you're going to use a CPU like the 8000 series and you need to use onboard graphics, you can use that there. We've got a USB 2 header. It's also the one that's going to be upgrading your BIOS. There's a BIOS flash button on the bottom of there as well. Makes upgrading really easy. You don't even need a CPU for it. We've got our 2 40 gigabit per second USB-C ports. These also support DisplayPort. Now, like I mentioned on the last video, USB 4 is now mandatory on the X870 board, so you will see a couple of those at least on every board. The 4 blue USB ports, these are going to be 5 gigabits per second. We've then got our Wi-Fi connect point, so these just go on and push on. Very easy to install. No need to thread them like the traditional ones. Then last but not least, at the bottom, we've got our audio options. So that was a look around the ASUS TUF Gaming X870 Plus Wi-Fi. Let me know what you think about it in the comments box below. I will add the pricing and availability when it's available into the description. Obviously nothing until the official launch, which is soon TM. Have a little Google, though you can find it, but I can't say anything officially. However, I will have some other boards hopefully to cover from some other manufacturers, and then we're going to do a roundup for the actual release day as well to talk about my thoughts on the overall launch. There's a couple of boards from some other manufacturers that are a little bit, oh, well, this just seems like a copy and paste, so we'll be talking about that. Might get a little bit spicy, so get subscribed and do the embarrassing, don't miss that. Anything else you want to know, of course, leave a comment, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know which board you want to see next of the other ASUS, and I'll do that maybe tomorrow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.